Kaiser Permanente is the largest nonprofit integrated health system in the country. We have the privilege of taking care of 12.4 million people across our country, providing them with care and coverage. We have a network of 22,000 physicians, almost 200,000 employees across the country.
Our mission at Kaiser Permanente is to provide high-quality, affordable healthcare to our members and to improve the health of the communities that we serve.
Housing and health are totally connected. If you think about it, what we know from the data is that people who are homeless have a life expectancy that's 27 years less than those who are housed. And even when you look at healthcare utilization, we know that homeless people are more likely to be admitted to the hospital. Once they're in the hospital, they're likely to stay 2 to 3 days longer in the hospital. And once they're discharged from the hospital, they're 50% more likely to be readmitted to the hospital. So we know that housing and health are totally interconnected. And as a health organization, we have to be looking at housing and homelessness as a key indicator for health. So the impact investment portfolio, as an example, has been our way to say, hey, we're going to commit $200 million to invest in projects that not only have good financial return on investment, but also social return on investment. And part of that effort was working with other organizations, other companies to do the same.
We wanted to look for partners that really knew how to do housing investment and that knew how to do it in the different markets where we operate. And so we found Enterprise Community Partners. They're the largest community development finance institution in the US. And they have a lot of experience not only making investments in housing, but also in promoting policy and sort of the wraparound systemic change that's needed to support stable housing.
Now what we're doing is we're taking that work and put it at scale across all of our footprint and looking at health in a total health type of approach. It's physical health, it's mental health, and it's social health.
We want to see that that more housing is getting produced, more housing is getting preserved, more people, more individuals are having access to that housing, that it's better quality housing. And then we want ultimately to be able to see how does that affect those individuals' health.
Addressing the homelessness issues in this country is going to have to be a team effort. No one agency, no one organization, no one level of government can address this issue and solve for it. It requires all hands on deck. And that's why our approach has been about engaging others, stimulating others, encouraging others to be part of that journey and working with us on this effort.
Well, that video really brought to life a lot of what we talked about in the last session. We have a couple of ways for you to do Q&A. We have the mic runners in the back. I don't think anyone in this room is shy, but if you are, you can also submit a question through the app. I have an iPad here, and I can read your question out loud. But this is a great example of, as you talked about in the video, partnership, bringing together a constituency in the form of the Enterprise Financial Organization that was able to help you with the financing piece, a health system getting involved in housing. I'm sure there were community groups involved as well. Would love to get your questions for the doctor while we have him. We have a question here, Professor Kaplan.
But, there are so many, and you're going to know this better than I, correlated variables with that. The people who are homeless tend to have a much higher incidence of mental health problems. They likely have substance abuse problems. So taking some person, with all these factors and say, okay, now we're putting you in a home, deals with the ostensible thing of getting them out of tents and into a nice apartment. But you also have to deal with the mental health issues, the substance abuse issues, the unemployment issues. So it seems like a far more complex undertaking than just housing to really have an impact, A, and B, you have a sense of the time frame of accountability as to when you make these interventions until it starts showing up in reduced hospitalization and all the other factors that you talked about.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kaplan, for the question. So let me just start by saying you're absolutely right when it comes to all the other variable factors that impact health, in addition to being out on the street. And so in addition to the work that we've done around the impact investment, we've also committed to thinking boldly on getting people off the street and what does that look like. And we've launched an effort called Oakland 515. So last year, as part of our work, we've developed an intervention that identified by name the 515 people who are out on the streets in Oakland who are 50 plus, who have at least one medical problems. We got to a point where we identified those folks by name by working through a bunch of different organizations. And we've made a commitment that we'd want to partner with the community to actually get these 515 people off the street in a housing first type of approach, if you want, and then provide them with all the wraparound services to address the points that you've raised. And we thought we weren't sure if we're going to be able to be successful. I mean, people are on the streets, particularly when you're becoming an older person, you're aging on the street. You know, in the homelessness sphere, we say 50 is the new 75. And what we've learned over the last 6 months, so we've been now in that effort for 6 months working with these 515 people who we know by name, and we were successful to get over 300 of those folks in the last 6 months off the streets and get them into stable housing and arrangements. And what we've realized is that these folks, to your point, need a lot of wraparound services. Actually, 90% of these 301 people who are already housed out of that cohort have mental health issues and or substance abuse issues. 70% of those folks actually have income. It's just they've had so many barriers to get them into housing. So through that effort, we created a small flexible fund that would allow these individuals to meet all the barriers that's keeping them off the street. But the key lesson that we're learning is to keep those individuals housed, we have to be able to provide the wraparound services and be able to get their mental health issues addressed, their substance abuse issues addressed, some of their legal challenges addressed, getting them signed up for SSI, SSDI to be able to get additional benefit. And that type of work is so critical. Otherwise, housing first by itself is not going to be enough to be able to get individuals to have better lives and to really lower total cost of care. And as part of that effort, we are also looking at the impact on the total cost of care on those individuals as well as sustainability in housing.
Other questions? Someone back there? You just wait for the mic, please.
Thank you very much for this wonderful story. I come from Uganda, and I just wanted to know, at what stage of a business can one start thinking of these innovative, inclusive ideas? Why I ask this is this. In Africa, and I can talk of any country in Africa, the bulk of the businesses are very small businesses. Many of the people who actually need to be included are interacting with businesses that don't have resources to invest in these strategies. What would be the trigger for small businesses to actually look at this, because they impact on a large number of people? That's my question to you. Thank you.
I mean, my experience has been with the health system and with larger organization, and I have to tell you, it's been a journey. Even in large organization, it's a journey. Traditionally, when our board of directors, 15 years ago or so, created a committee of the board that's focusing on advancing community health, we set the stage, and they had the vision to say, we're going to start carving out resources, we're going to have a systematic approach to addressing the community health needs and responding to those needs. And that's really set the stage, and now, almost $2.8 billion out of our resources are dedicated to improving community health every year. But I think a few years ago, that's when we started saying it's not just what's being dedicated as community health dollars is what's making a difference. Let's look at the organization overall. When you're an $80 billion organization, you build facilities, you hire people, you invest in the market, you do a lot of things, that you purchase things. So we started saying, let's look at all of those. So it's not just about the $2.8 billion, it's about the full organization. And now we have very specific programs on the way we hire people, the way we build facility to make sure that we're hiring local people to help build our medical office building, to make sure we're working with people getting out of jail so that they do have a chance, a second chance, to be able to get re-engaged in society. So we work with them to bring them on board. When we're purchasing, and we're now working and looking at minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses. We're also supporting through an effort with an organization called ICCC, or ICIC, the Initiative for Competitiveness in the Inner City, to support small businesses in our communities with all the tools that they need to be able to grow and become bigger businesses. So I think for us as a big organization, it's been a journey. First, focus on what you're investing right in the community health space, and then let's look at everything else we're investing in to make sure that it's advancing community health. So I would assume for small businesses, it might be something similar. I've never been in a very small business, so I'm not sure I'm the right person to advise on that. But I think it's really important to think for even small businesses, you're hiring people, you're building things, you're investing in the community, and all of those can have, yes, good business return, but it's also need to have good community return as well as social return.
We have time for one more quick question right here.
So hopefully this is a follow-on to the two prior questions. My question is around repeatability. So you obviously have very dominant market share in the Bay Area, and that's unique, I think, to your positioning there. As you move out to, for example, in your own space, Mid-Atlantic region, outside of DC, which is a very fragmented market, how do you repeat this kind of model? And it may go back to your question about small businesses, where you don't have, I'll say, a monolithic organization that's driving this agenda. How do you bring together different stakeholders to try to make something like this happen? Did you do that in the Bay Area? Do you have plans to do this in the Mid-Atlantic and other areas? And what lessons can you share?
Yeah. So we actually do this work across all of our footprint. The 39 community service areas where we're in, we are doing this work. Now, clearly, those are very different communities. In Oakland, for example, I think we're like 50 or 60% of the market. In Baltimore, we're not that high of a. We don't have that high of a market. The reality, though, all of this work requires true collaboration, bringing people together, and really putting the competitiveness to the side for a moment so that you can figure out how you can support communities and lift up the communities so everybody rise. And that's the spirit that we bring this work to. So whether it's in the Bay Area where we have a high market share or in other areas where we don't have as high of a market share yet, we really do want to be focusing on this work as core to who we are as an organization.
I would imagine that given your success in East Oakland and the magnitude of the homelessness problem across the United States, that people are probably lining up to partner with Kaiser Permanente. I'd like everyone to please thank Dr. CHOUCAIR for his time.
Thank you.